from the Mercy One studio.
Support for Faith on Trial and Iowa Catholic Radio provided in part by Imogene Ingredients.
Our freedom of conscience and religion is being challenged by laws and regulations imposed by secular society. It's time to hear from the top Christian litigators in the nation who have come forward to tell us the truth and help us defend our faith.
Hear ye, hear ye. All rise. Faith on Trial with Defender of the Faith, Deacon Mike Mano, is in session.
And good Holy Thursday morning from the Mercy One studio in West Des Moines. I'm Deacon Mike Mano, sitting here with Gina Knoll. Gina, good morning. How are you?
Good morning, Deacon. I am well. Are you having a good Easter week?
Yes.
Do they call that Easter week?
Easter week is next week.
Is next week?
This is Holy Week.
Holy Week.
Yeah.
So,
but I'll have a good Easter week, too. Yes.
Yeah, well, we'll get to that. We
got a lot of liturgy to go through here in the next couple of days.
It's beautiful.
It is. The Triduum is, I think, the most beautiful liturgies in the year.
I was listening to a broadcast of Mother Angelica,
Mm-hmm.
you know, the founder of EWTN Radio and TV and everything worldwide. And she was talking about how so few churches celebrate this week, the high services and
Mm-hmm.
or very poorly attended Good Friday Mass. And I can say that here in Des Moines, that's not the case.
No. We'll have, I'm sure, at St. Augustine, we'll probably have a packed house tonight. If past history is any guide to what's going to happen. Although, you got to remember, we didn't have it last year.
Right.
So we'll see.
I think there's a little bit of a pent-up anticipation for
I hope so. I hope
services.
so. And tomorrow our service is at 3, our Good Friday service. And then we're back on Saturday night with the Easter Vigil. And then I have one of the Sunday Masses.
Wonderful.
So I'm going to be all liturgied out by the end of the week.
You'll need a vacation on Monday.
I will.
Eat your chocolate and
That's right.
Celebrate your Easter week in relaxing mode.
Yeah.
Well, good. So in this, our show is not very Holy Week oriented, but it does have some things to do about protecting our faith.
Faith
and
on
being
trial
able
oriented.
to,
Yeah. And speaking of orientation of things, I see where is it Rita Hart? Is that her first name? The congressional candidate. She has withdrawn her appeal to Nancy Pelosi.
So in Iowa, we had a congressional
now.
race that was separated by 6 votes.
Mm-hmm.
Originally, it was 100 and
It was
some
126 votes. Or something like that.
Right,
yeah,
and then they counted twice, recounted all the counties, and they got closer and closer and closer. And Marionette Miller Meeks won the race by 6 votes.
Right.
And a bipartisan council here in Iowa confirmed that and certified it. And so off to D.C., Dr. Meeks went. But Rita Hart followed her right along and said, instead of challenging it in the courts in Iowa, she took it to the...
I think that was one of her big mistakes right away, is she made no legal challenge.
Well, I think
she
thought that, the majority, the Democrat majority in Washington, D.C. would back her and she would win this battle. I guess there were 22 votes that are supposedly...
I don't think she would have won.
Yeah.
I don't
know. They had a good lawyer, but...
there were too many that had already said they weren't going to support. Too many Democrats said they weren't going to support
They
her.
weren't going to go ahead and do that vote. So she is not going to be the congresswoman from Iowa. We will have Dr. Marionette Miller Meeks.
Right.
And
who's been serving since January when she was sworn in. And that's the other thing I didn't understand. They have this challenge to her, but they swore her in anyway. It would seem to me the first thing you should do is take care of that challenge. That should have been done but somehow it was
I did hear
Lester.
McCarthy's remarks yesterday, and he said there were a number of these races that the House was going to take up and contest, and they've all dropped off, and there's one left, I think, in Illinois, and it's a Democrat who won, and McCarthy's not going to fight it. He says that he won. The state certified it, and the Republicans accept that vote. So.
Yeah, the Constitution says that each house is a judge of its own membership, so it does have the authority to reject a member or to expel a member, but that's got to be pretty clearly laid out. And usually that happens when somebody is involved in some illegal shenanigans.
Yeah.
But this is just an election challenge, and apparently
well, there was a lot of it to go around this year.
There was. And if you watch the news, or at least the news that's reporting everything, you will see that there's some of that that's still being debated, and there are legal challenges too, and they're recounting votes. So we'll see what happens.
And I thought I saw in this morning's news that Arizona has hired 4 firms, independent firms, to come in and take a look at their
there's no doubt in my mind that there was something wrong with last year's election. So we're going to find out about it now, and we'll see what goes on.
Well, I hope we protect ourselves in the future.
I hope we do, too. Do you have a prayer to open us up with?
I do. A prayer for peace on this Holy Thursday. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. God of peace, bring your peace to our violent world, peace in the hearts of all men and women, and peace among the nations of the earth. Turn to your way of love those whose hearts and minds are consumed with hatred. Strengthen us in hope, and give us the wisdom and courage to work tirelessly for a world where true peace and love reign among nations and in the hearts of all. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Gina. This is Faith on Trial on Iowa Catholic Radio, and we'll be back in about 3 minutes with Mike Berry from First Liberty.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio and John Leonetti in the Morning is provided by Blessman International. Blessman International partners with volunteers and donors to provide sustainable programs for children in South Africa by leading a 12-day, all-inclusive experience sharing the heart of Christ with vulnerable children in South Africa. Teams are forming to do something significant in an African child's life. Learn more at blessmaninternational.org. That's blessmaninternational.org. Thank you, Blessman International, for your support of Iowa Catholic Radio. Support for Iowa Catholic Radio and John Leonetti in the Morning provided by Bell Construction.
Bell Construction is a roofing company. They specialize in residential re-roofs, like commercial jobs, and have the experience to meet all of your roofing needs with personal service. With Bell Construction, the owner will come to your home or place of business in person to inspect and ensure the quality of work that you deserve. They pride themselves in working with you on a personal basis and making sure you are satisfied. Bell Construction, 515-963-4494. Bell Construction.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio and Catholic Women Now provided in part by Permar Security, providing security solutions for homes and businesses since 1953. Permar Security is a Catholic-owned family business supplying security systems, access control systems, video surveillance, fire alarm systems, and video doorbells. All alarm systems are monitored out of their monitoring center located in the state of Iowa. Permar Security, 515-244-5660, permarsecurity.com.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio and Dowling Catholic Sports is provided in part by Ashworth Vision Clinic. With 2 licensed optometrists, Barbara Sheets, a Dowling graduate, and Dr. Craig Harper, the Ashworth Vision Clinic team provides complete eye exams, contact lenses, glasses, glaucoma testing, and pre- and post-operative care. Ashworth Vision Clinic is located at 60th and Ashworth in West Des Moines. 515-440-4610 or online, ashworthvision.com.
Thank you, Dental Associates, for underwriting Dowling Catholic Sports 365. With over 40 years' experience, Dental Associates is a group dental practice with the mission of promoting optimum health and well-being to all patients, providing preventative, restorative, and cosmetic dentistry for the entire family. Message underwritten by Dr. Kenton Gleichman, Dr. Steve Karbaka, and Dr. Ben Nagel. Dental Associates, addressing your smile, needs, and dreams. Online at DesMoines-DentalAssociates.com.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio and Faith on Trial provided by Paul Martin and Paul Mitchell, owners of Imogene Ingredients. Imogene Ingredients supply specialized feed ingredients for livestock and pet diets to improve maternal and young animal health in both conventional and organic production. And you're listening to Faith on Trial on Iowa Catholic Radio, and with us right now is Mike Berry, who is not only a Marine Corps reservist, an officer in the Marine Corps Reserves, but he's also an attorney with First Liberty. Michael, how are you this morning?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on.
Certainly. And I know that you are at First Liberty. You handle a lot of the stuff with military religious liberty stuff, and I noticed that you were just before the House Armed Services Committee testifying to some of the things that you have seen or heard that may be wrong in the military and affect religious liberty. So why don't we just start there, and you can kind of give us a little brief about what you told the committee members.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, just a few days ago, the House Armed Services Committee held a hearing on the subject of extremism in the armed forces. And I was invited to testify as a subject matter expert on constitutional law, especially as it affects our military service members. And, what I really wanted to focus on, the message that I wanted to send to the committee members was that, first of all, nobody wants to get rid of true extremists from our military more than those of us who serve in uniform.
Right.
It diminishes our own service and our reputation. It hurts our military, and we don't want any part of it. But I think the problem is you cannot defeat what you cannot define. And thus far, the Department of Defense has been unable to define what they mean by extremists. They haven't even presented a good working definition of what extremism is or who extremists are in the military. All we keep hearing is we have a problem with extremism. And when the question is asked, well, what do you mean by extremism? The answer is usually something like, well, we're not really sure. It kind of depends on the circumstances. And that presents a lot of legal and constitutional issues, especially because in the past, in the very recent past, there have been instances, documented instances, when the Department of Defense has began identifying just mainstream religious beliefs as possibly extremist. And so I wanted to sound the warning on that.
Yeah, I know there was a couple of years ago, I guess it was, there was a slideshow, I guess, in a reserve community in, I think it was Pennsylvania, that directly linked very conservative religious groups to extremism.
Yeah, that's right. It was an Army Reserve training presentation, and on the slide was titled "Religious Extremism," and it labeled a number of groups as religious extremists, groups such as Hamas, Al-Qaeda, and the Ku Klux Klan, which I think most people would probably agree, yes, those are violent extremist groups. They use or advocate violence to accomplish their agendas. But then, further down the slide, you see also listed were evangelical Christians and Catholics. And I was shocked and stunned by that.
I'm wondering how many members of the committee were aware of those kinds of slides in the training manuals.
I brought it to their attention, so I included a screenshot of the slide in my written testimony, and one of the committee members did mention the fact that they had looked into that, and the Army Reserve had since removed that slide and sort of issued a clarification. Well, the person who created that didn't go through the proper procedures and hadn't properly vetted that, so we don't think that speaks for the whole Army. Okay, very well. But then I presented another document that absolutely was vetted and published by the Department of Defense. And I'm going to give you a direct quote from this document. It's a training guide for military people who their job is to do equal opportunity, right? So in other words, they're sort of the ones who have to ensure that there's no discrimination in the military. And the training guide states the following. This is a direct quote. Nowadays, instead of dressing in sheets and publicly espousing messages of hate, most extremists will talk about individual liberties, states' rights, and making the world a better place, end quote.
And that's extreme.
So, if you believe in individual liberties, states' rights, and making the world a better place, the Department of Defense thinks that you could be an extremist. And I told the committee, newsflash, the people who wrote the Constitution of the United States believed in individual liberties, states' rights, and making the world a better place. That's why they wrote the Constitution. So, what do we intend to do about that?
Yeah.
So,
there's the new Secretary of Defense, Lloyd Austin, issued recently a stand-down order. so that he could identify and root out extremism in the military. How does that play into all of this? Because I kind of see that as kind of a covering for something.
Yeah, I again, going back to, I think the first issue is we have to define what we mean by extremism. And once we have and I offered a definition of what I think extremism should be, and that is anyone who uses, threatens, or advocates violence to accomplish their political objectives is an extremist, right? Once you cross the line from just advancing an idea or a belief to now advocating violence to accomplish that to me, that's extreme, right? And that's consistent with the FBI's definition and with how we criminalize domestic terror in this country. And so I think if it works for the FBI and for the Department of Justice, then it should also work for the Department of Defense. And so once you have a good definition, then the next task is to define, okay, now that we know what it is, how bad is the problem, right? Let's try to grasp how big is the scope of this problem, and then let's go from there, because it might be, I mean, you mentioned Secretary Austin. His own words, he said 99.9% of people serving in the military are not extremists. Well, then by your own admission, Mr. Secretary, it's 0.01%. So, the question is, should we be focused, should we be using this time, energy, and resources that we're spending on combating extremism, shouldn't that be better used to address issues like the rise of America's threats, right? Mm-hmm. China, Russia, Iran, etc. So, and look, and if the powers that be decide extremism really is that big of a problem, then, as I said earlier, then yeah, you will find no disagreement or very, very little disagreement from within the service community, because nobody wants to get rid of extremists more than people who are serving, because it actually hurts our ability to accomplish the mission when people like that are in the military. So let's get rid of them, and then let's move on with the mission. You
think part of the problem with the definition of extremism is that too many people, including the media, are picking up on what the Southern Poverty Law Center defines as extreme?
Yeah, that was a very interesting part of the hearing. There was another witness there from the Southern Poverty Law Center, and she wanted to advocate for. Her position was that the true problem in the military is the rise of white supremacy and white extremism. And I think that may be casting too broad of a brush. I think that is an unfair characterization of the military. I mean, our own Secretary of Defense himself is a black man. So again, not to use an anecdote, but surely our military itself is not a white supremacist organization if we're all following the orders and directives of somebody who's clearly not a white supremacist. Mm-hmm. And I assume that 99.9% of those serving in uniform have absolutely no problem following Secretary Austin's lead, because if he was confirmed by the Senate, therefore the operating assumption should be he is more than qualified for that job. But at the same time, to say that the real problem in the military is this rise of white supremacy, then the obvious question should be, okay, where's the data that supports that? Where's the evidence to support that? And it's got to be more than anecdotes. It's got to be more than, well, somebody reached out to us and said that they had witnessed or observed a white supremacist who happened to have some military experience or background. That does not mean that there is a rise of white supremacy in the military. There are always going to be,
there's always outliers.
Yeah, there's always outliers. Exactly. So, and I wanted to bring the committee back to that argument over and over again. Let's come up with a definition first that all or most of us can agree upon. Then we can determine how bad the problem is. And I said, and the danger here is that if we define this too broadly to include, Catholicism, evangelical Christianity, we're starting to go down the slippery slope of we're no longer regulating conduct. We can regulate conduct. We've always regulated people's conduct. But what we've never tried to do is regulate people's beliefs. And that's I think that's the real danger here, right? Is that we don't want to start creating thought police to where, something Orwellian where, oh, you believe in what the Bible teaches about marriage, you're an extremist, right? And that's the direction where I fear things could be headed if we don't if we don't apply some common sense and some constitutional law.
And I think that's kind of where the Southern Poverty Law Center has gone, because you find a lot of organizations like yours are ending up on their hate list or their hate map because you advocate for the traditional roles in marriage and oppose abortion, things like that. I know there are a lot of Catholic organizations that have come under fire as extremists because we simply believe in the traditional view of marriage and family and all that.
Well, and that was a question that we receive at First Liberty quite often from service members. We'll have Catholic service members reach out and ask and say, because the Department of Defense policy is really unclear on what an extremist is, but one of the things it says is people who advocate to take away other people's civil rights, including what they refer to as reproductive freedom or reproductive rights. And they say, so I'm a Catholic and I pray the rosary in front of an abortion clinic every weekend, praying for an end to abortion in this country. Does that make me an extremist? And I got to tell you, it's difficult for me to answer because my personal answer as a constitutional attorney is absolutely not. You have every right to pray as long as you have a lawful right to be there. You're not on private property trespassing, but if you're in a public space, then you're allowed to pray. But does that mean the Department of Defense is going to label you an extremist? The answer right now is we don't know because they haven't given us a definition. They very well might say those who oppose abortion, they're trying to take away the rights of people to have an abortion. Therefore, they're extremists. That would be absolutely ridiculous, and I think there would be hopefully legal challenges to that. But I can't sit here right now and tell you that that's not going to happen because the Department of Defense has yet to say no. We would never do that. So and I think they should. I think they should make a strong, forceful message. We will not criminalize people's thoughts or beliefs. But we haven't seen that yet.
What you bring up is reminiscent of what is going on in California right now. And you may be familiar with this. There's a California bill in the legislature. It's AB 655. It's called the California Law Enforcement Accountability Reform Act, which is doing much the same thing to police officers there. And they talk in this bill that somebody who is committing hate speech or hate speech crime should be removed from the police department. And it includes, under their definition of hate speech, they at least give you a definition here, advocating or supporting the denial of constitutional rights of, and then they list a whole bunch of people, and then they include ethnicity, nationality, religion, gender identity, sexual orientation. So again, you have a situation in California where they're going to vote on that shortly to determine whether somebody who is what we would call a traditional Catholic might not be able to be a cop anymore.
Yeah, first of all, I think the chances of that bill passing without some sort of legal challenge are low, because I think it is subject to a legal challenge, and if it is challenged, it should fail. It should be declared unconstitutional. But second, if that does end up becoming the law in California, then okay, I hope that means that somebody who uses the Lord's name in vain can now be charged with hate speech. Because why can't that be considered hate speech? When somebody, because that's, I get a little tired of being told, and I know people who First Liberty represents are tired of being told that you cannot advocate, even from a purely policy-driven or fact-driven or scientific-driven point of view, you cannot advocate for traditional biblical views of marriage and human sexuality because that's hate speech. In other words, saying something that is consistent with what the Bible and Christians and Judeo-Christians have believed and taught for millennia, that is offensive or possibly offensive to somebody else and might hurt their feelings, and therefore it's hate speech and it's illegal. Okay, well, then when people use the Lord's name in vain, that's equally offensive. And why can't that be considered hate speech? And the response is usually, oh, well, you just have to grow thicker skin, and that's just life. You just have to learn to deal with that. I mean, literally, that's the response that we've been told, is that Christians need to just kind of grow up and mature a little bit and learn that sometimes you're going to hear things that you don't like, and that's just life. And it's just shocking, the hypocrisy.
Yeah.
Well, after listening or watching the hearing, reading the transcripts of it, my first inclination was to wonder if this is all implemented, who would be serving in our military, and what would our numbers look like?
Yeah.
Well, I'm really glad you brought that up, because that was another point that I was actually asked about. That what are the real dangers from a practical standpoint, right? If we get this wrong. And I said, look, just look at the data. I'm kind of a data guy, and I maybe a bit of a nerd background, and I
love that.
I
have a lot of respect for that.
And so I look at data, and I said, okay, so the majority of people serving in the military right now self-identify as people of faith, and specifically people of the Christian faith. Probably, the latest numbers are somewhere in the 75% range. So roughly 3 in 4 identify as religious, and specifically of Christianity, some form, whether it's Catholic, Protestant, etc. Then you look at that's currently serving, and then you look at the people who are joining the military or who desire to join the military. We call that the accession process. And people who join the military, the current available data says that people who identify as highly religious are significantly more likely to join the military than people who identify as not religious. Okay, so that means the people who are currently in the military are religious, and the people who want to join the military are religious. And if we get this wrong, we're essentially telling all of those people, you're not welcome, right? Uncle Sam does not need you. And I said that is a disaster waiting to happen, because you're essentially telling them you're not needed. The military doesn't want you. It doesn't welcome you. You don't belong here. And for those who want to join, you either join the military and give up your religious beliefs and your religious freedom, or don't join the military. And again, that's a disaster waiting to happen, because that's going to affect recruiting, retention, and readiness.
Yeah. We just got about 30 seconds left here, and before you go, I wanted to bring up the topic of this First Liberty Live, the series that First Liberty is doing.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up as well. First Liberty Live is as you said, it's a series of very timely interviews with experts in a number of fields that affect religious liberty. I mean, whether if you are worried about the government imposing mandatory COVID vaccines, we've got a First Liberty Live about that. If you're worried about whether your church is going to be closed and not allowed to reopen, there's a First Liberty Live about that. Or if you care about religious liberty in the military, I think there's one coming up with me talking about that for Military Appreciation Month, and so on and so forth. So these are topical, they're timely, they're relevant, and they are live interviews with Q&A with an actual subject matter expert.
And where do we find
them? I was just about to say, go to firstliberty.org, and I'm pretty sure there's going to be a pop-up window where you can actually subscribe so that you get an alert whenever the next one comes. The next episode is coming up.
Very good. Thank you for joining us, Mike. We certainly appreciate it. It's Mike Berry, attorney with First Liberty. And this is Faith on Trial on Iowa Catholic Radio, and Gina and I will be back in about 3 minutes.
Iowa Catholic Radio and Catholic Women Now, provided in part by Permar Security, providing security solutions for homes and businesses since 1953. Permar Security is a Catholic-owned family business supplying security systems, access control systems, video surveillance, fire alarm systems, and video doorbells. All alarm systems are monitored out of their monitoring center located in the state of Iowa. Permar Security, 515-244-5660, permarsecurity.com.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio and Dowling Catholic Sports is provided in part by Ashworth Vision Clinic. With 2 licensed optometrists, Barbara Sheets, a Dowling graduate, and Dr. Craig Harper, the Ashworth Vision Clinic team provides complete eye exams, contact lenses, glasses, glaucoma testing, and pre- and post-operative care. Ashworth Vision Clinic is located at 60th and Ashworth in West Des Moines. 515-440-4610 or online, ashworthvision.com.
Thank you, Dental Associates, for underwriting Dowling Catholic Sports 365. With over 40 years' experience, Dental Associates is a group dental practice with the mission of promoting optimum health and well-being to all patients, providing preventative, restorative, and cosmetic dentistry for the entire family. Message underwritten by Dr. Kenton Gleichman, Dr. Steve Karbaka, and Dr. Ben Nagel. Dental Associates, addressing your smile, needs, and dreams. Online at DesMoines-DentalAssociates.com.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio and John Leonetti in the Morning is provided by Five Sons Naturescapes. Five Sons Naturescapes is a Catholic veteran-owned family company providing premium outdoor landscaping, clean up and restore outdoor living space with retaining walls, privacy fencing, pergolas, paver sidewalks, and patios. Issues with soil settling and water around the foundation and yard? Five Sons Naturescapes can grade and install drainage tile to help. Five Sons Naturescapes online at fivesonsnaturescapes.com.
Thank you, Skeffington's Formal Wear, for sponsoring Dowling Catholic High School football. In business since 1951, Skeffington's Formal Wear offers quality service, style, and selection, providing tuxedos, suits, and casual groom attire for weddings, proms, and any other special occasion. Skeffington's Formal Wear, with convenient locations in Des Moines, West Des Moines, Davenport, Coralville, and Ankeny. All locations are family-owned and operated by members in their respective communities, fitting you for life celebrations. Online at skeffingtons.com.
Here's your forecast on Iowa Catholic Radio. We have high pressure parked over the Central Plains and the Midwestern states, and that means fair weather for us today. It will be cool with our high only in the upper 40s, but we should have plenty of sunshine. Overnight it'll be clear, low near 30, and then gusty wind tomorrow, sunny and warmer, will be in the low 60s. The weather is brought to you by Divine Treasures, a Catholic book and gift store serving the Des Moines community for over 25 years. I'm meteorologist Steve Hamilton on Iowa Catholic Radio.
And this is Faith on Trial on Iowa Catholic Radio, and we are back now. And joining us is one of our favorite guests, Dr. Ann Hendershott, who is professor of sociology at Franciscan University and author of The Politics of Envy. And last time we had her on, we talked about her book, but there's some new stuff that is coming up now, especially involving Asian Americans. And Professor Hendershott has penned an article on that, and we'd like to talk to her about that. Good morning, Professor. How are you?
Oh, good morning. Thank you for having me on, and thank you for the nice intro. I'm happy to be on again, but not happy to be talking about this subject. It's just a horror. Every day we hear about new horrible incidents of violence perpetrated against Asian American women, mostly, and a lot of men, elderly men, for no reason at all. No reason at all, and I try to make sense of it in my article. So thank you for having me on to talk
certainly.
About that.
Thank you for writing the article. Let's talk.
It frustrates me.
This appeared in Crisis magazine, and you gave, I thought, a nice history of kind of the Asian American experience here, and it looks like a lot of this stuff, they claim it's coming from white supremacists, but it doesn't appear from your article that that's really what the problem is.
No, that's laughable. White supremacists are not out on our streets attacking Asian Americans. Now, that's not to say that whites are not complicit in the history of anti-Asian American attacks throughout history in our country, beginning with the infamous Chinese Exclusion Act, but that was a very long time ago. And then certainly we were all complicit in the FDR decision to intern Japanese Americans in 1942. A lot of people agreed with that, but some people thought it was xenophobic and to take businesses away. But I argue that there was envy at the basis of that. But that's another story. Let's get to these attacks. It's very hard to find the perpetrator demographics, and I'm wondering why. It's very seldom they even show the picture of the perpetrators, and you scratch the surface a little bit and you look at Bureau of Justice data, and you find out that it's really not whites that are perpetrating these attacks. It's people of color. A lot of African Americans, a lot of Latinos, especially in New York City. The latest one that I'm sure a lot of your listeners saw on TV is a poor 65-year-old woman going to church during Holy Week, comes out of her building 2 days ago, and is attacked by this gigantic man, enormous, 38-year-old Brandon Elliott, who already has served much of his life in prison and has done horrible crimes. I think he killed his mother, but he's out on the streets in Midtown Manhattan. She doesn't live far. She lives in a beautiful building. I know right where the building is. It's called the Brodsky Building. It's owned by the Brodsky Corporation. And she came out of her building, going to church, and this gigantic man is on camera, so they can't hide this, knocking her to the ground and then kicking her in the head several times while she's down, and then casually walking away. But while this is going on, she's really attacked a second time, but not physically, by the two doormen that are handling the Brodsky Corporation building that she just came out of, who not only don't do anything, but they close the door to their building so that the bad guy can't get into their building. Now, in their defense, they'll probably say they were protecting their building, but I would say, how could they do such a thing? Because one of those two men was enormous, as big as the attacker, and if you were there, I think you would go out there and try to get this to stop, or at least try to get more help. Neither of them call 911. You see them on camera just watching and then closing the door. So that is so disturbing to me. There's a huge increase, but I mean, it's not like people are saying there's an 800% increase in hate crimes in New York City. Well, you know, people love statistics like that. You have to really look at the raw numbers in cases like this. New York City hate crimes against Asians went from 3 to 28. Now, that's horrible in 1 year. And I think it's related partly to COVID and the blame toward Asians. But it's not you shouldn't call it an 833% increase. You know, that doesn't help. Cleveland, Pittsburgh, they've all increases. And the media...
Yeah, you start out with a small number and you add a few more numbers to it and you have a large percentage increase. Right?
I know, 100% increase go from 2 to 4. That's crazy. You shouldn't do it that way. But we need to know the race of the offenders because people need to stop lying about it. And I don't want to say, we want to punish them. It isn't all blacks that are doing this, and all the offenders are not blacks. In San Francisco, there were several whites who perpetrated horrible crimes against Asians and Hispanics. And that's what my article tries to do. There's a lot of groups that are complicit in this.
Well, let me pick up on something that you mentioned here in the article, and that's this envious resentment and the concept of the good minority.
The model minority.
The model minority,
I was in college. That kind of came into being in the late 60s and 70s. And the model minority, meaning that was adopted by the media to describe the admirable Asian American success. And the problem with that model minority is, I mean, it's nice, you know, because they are very successful. If you look at income, because I teach sociology, so we're always looking at stratification issues. Asians have the highest income in the country. Asians have a $98,000 median income, more than double that of black households, the median income of $45,000, and significantly higher than whites, non-Hispanic whites, who have an annual median income of $76,000. So this model minority idea there's some truth in it. It's not a myth. They do very well. You know, it's all those tiger moms. They're very good. They're dedicated to motivating their children, and they're good. But part of the problem is the comparisons are made in the media very often to what's the matter with the rest of you people? You know, look at the Asians. They did so well, and they just got here. And look at you. You know, that's a problem. That causes resentment. If you've ever had a parent that did that to you, you know what that feels like, and you become resentful and sometimes very envious of a sibling. And I see that. I used to be a family therapist, and I used to see those dynamics. Well, look at this son, and he's getting good grades, and look at that son, he's getting expelled, and he's just awful if it weren't for him. That younger son is going to be very resentful of that older, and that's what I think we're seeing. That I think envy is. I know. I wrote the book, The Politics of Envy, so I see envy where others may not see it, and some people disagree. But I see envy here.
Well, yeah, and after having read the book, I can see that very quickly too. And it seems to me that we have one group of people who historically have been basically high achievers, and other groups that have not achieved as well. I can understand the envy that would play into that.
Yes, I do too, and I believe it's there, and we see it in their songs. I mean, if you look at rap music, it is filled with envy, and that's been going on since the 90s. If you go all the way back to Ice Cube, not that I'm a big rap fan, but I think you should listen to the lyrics of these songs because it tells you what's going on in their heads and in their communities. You look at Ice Cube back in the 90s, right around the time of the Rodney King riots in Los Angeles. He wrote Black Korea, and he talked about the hateful tension between the African Americans and the Korean store owners. They burned their stores down in those riots. 1,700 Korean businesses were destroyed. We're going to see that again if this doesn't stop, because there is such envy. And Ice Cube goes into that, this resentment and rage and envy. He doesn't talk about envy because nobody does. But when you start talking about pay respect to the black fist or we'll burn your store right down to a crisp, that's the lyrics. Now, I won't rap it for you because I don't think that would be a good idea.
I'm just impressed that you know the lyrics. So
I'm just impressed she knows Ice Cube.
I was teaching on the West Coast when this was going on. I was at the University of San Diego. So I was younger in the 90s and pretty plugged into that because I was teaching urban gangs class. So I did pay attention to that stuff. And it kind of stayed with you.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I believe we're just seeing a replication of that right now on a smaller scale.
There was, I suppose it's still going on, a claim against, I believe it was Harvard, for discrimination against Asians.
I know, it cracks me up. Harvard is taking this high moral ground about we need to protect our Asian brothers and sisters. In the meantime, they have closed their doors to Asian applicants because
no more
we can't
welcome.
have too many of them here. Yeah, the hypocrisy just goes on and on.
We were just talking about this. This is the year or the generation of hypocrisy. So
yes.
Be careful what you say.
Really is,
because, yes. So we're talking about different cultures, too. And, we can blame it on envy. But this isn't unique to the United States. Cultures have had these clashes against each other for the eternity of the world, really. How do we move beyond it? And as Catholics, what can we do to change the dynamics?
Right. When I published this, I wanted to publish this in a Catholic journal. Usually I write for American Spectator, but I can't get the Catholic idea in there because faithful Catholics, we understand this kind of resentment. We've been taught since our earliest days. And when you say it's happening in other countries, I agree with you. But I believe that it's usually frustration over relative deprivation that the Asians in these countries are coming and they're succeeding and they're taking jobs from us. Everybody believes that. And there's resentment. And resentment usually stems from a form of envy, even if people don't want to say that. And I argue that Catholics understand that sin better than others. Most people are just clueless because we have Scripture, and it's all over the Bible. Catholics have the advantage of a long list of church fathers and Scripture who warn us about envy. I mean, Aquinas and Augustine and Gregory. It's in the Ten Commandments. We know from the Book of Wisdom that through the devil's envy, that death entered the world. We know Eve's envious desire to be as smart as God, and Cain's envy of his brother's sacrifices to God. I mean, from a child, when I was little, I remember being taught this is what happens to really envious people who covet other. I mean, my parents didn't use those words, but I was a middle child, and I think they were kind of worried. I might kill one of my sisters or something. We had 3 girls, and I was a bit envious of the youngest because she was so cute and got all the attention that I used to get. I remember that feeling, and I remember my parents reminding me that this ends badly. You don't do that. Some people are never taught that, and people that are raised without religion and without that kind of moral teaching, they never know, and I think that's what we're seeing now.
So it's harder to temper when you don't recognize what it is.
Exactly. People would deny that they're envious. So why would I be envious?
No.
People always say that to me. You know.
I'll tell you, I watched the episodes of Tiger Mom or the stories about Tiger Mom, and I was envious. I wish I had that much. I could rein my children in like she could.
She was amazing, isn't she? I love that book. I absolutely.
Right.
Well, I think it goes to show you how much culture plays into this.
Right, exactly.
Yeah,
but you say that, and I can't help but think that the tradition of our African American families has a lot of good, solid, strong working culture. But it
conservative, family oriented. Mm-hmm. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Right.
We broke that up.
That was us.
That was us that did that.
Our government policies. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
We're continuing it, and it's expanding under the Biden administration.
Yeah.
So we're going to get more of this.
Yeah.
We will get more.
Yeah. Unfortunately,
that's too bad because it'll just breed more of this envy.
Just breed more hate and more violence and everything, and we don't want that.
It will.
And unfortunately, Professor, we are out of time right now, but we
thank you.
Oh, we're always willing to have you. So just call in anytime. We'll put you right on the air.
Thanks so much.
Certainly. We appreciate it. Dr. Ann Henderson, Professor of Sociology at Franciscan University and author of The Politics of Envy, which is a good book you should pick up somewhere when you get a chance. And we will be right back after these messages.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio and Catholic Women Now provided in part by Permar Security, providing security solutions for homes and businesses since 1953. Permar Security is a Catholic-owned family business supplying security systems, access control systems, video surveillance, fire alarm systems, and video doorbells. All alarm systems are monitored out of their monitoring center located in the state of Iowa. Permar Security, 515-244-5660, permarsecurity.com.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio and Dowling Catholic Sports is provided in part by Ashworth Vision Clinic. With 2 licensed optometrists, Barbara Sheets, a Dowling graduate, and Dr. Craig Harper, the Ashworth Vision Clinic team provides complete eye exams, contact lenses, glasses, glaucoma testing, and pre- and post-operative care. Ashworth Vision Clinic is located at 60th and Ashworth in West Des Moines. 515-440-4610 or online, ashworthvision.com.
Thank you, Dental Associates, for underwriting Dowling Catholic Sports 365. With over 40 years' experience, Dental Associates is a group dental practice with the mission of promoting optimum health and well-being to all patients, providing preventative, restorative, and cosmetic dentistry for the entire family. Message underwritten by Dr. Kenton Gleichman, Dr. Steve Karbaka, and Dr. Ben Nagel. Dental Associates, addressing your smile, needs, and dreams. Online at DesMoines-DentalAssociates.com.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio and John Leonetti in the Morning is provided by Five Sons Naturescapes. Five Sons Naturescapes is a Catholic veteran-owned family company providing premium outdoor landscaping, clean up and restore outdoor living space with retaining walls, privacy fencing, pergolas, paver sidewalks, and patios. Issues with soil settling and water around the foundation and yard? Five Sons Naturescapes can grade and install drainage tile to help. Five Sons Naturescapes online at fivesonsnaturescapes.com.
Thank you, Skeffington's Formal Wear, for sponsoring Dowling Catholic High School football. In business since 1951, Skeffington's Formal Wear offers quality service, style, and selection, providing tuxedos, suits, and casual groom attire for weddings, proms, and any other special occasion. Skeffington's Formal Wear, with convenient locations in Des Moines, West Des Moines, Davenport, Coralville, and Ankeny. All locations are family-owned and operated by members in their respective communities, fitting you for life's celebrations. Online at skeffingtons.com.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio and Storm Alert Weather is provided by Divine Treasures. Divine Treasures is a Catholic book and gift store serving the Des Moines community for over 25 years. Their mission is to help Catholics know, love, and keep their faith in our Lord Jesus Christ and His Church. Divine Treasures is where you can find great Catholic books, beautiful Bibles, rosaries, jewelry, statues, and religious gifts for those memorable events in your life. Divine Treasures, 5701 Hickman Road, Des Moines, 515-255-5230. Thank you to Divine Treasures for their support of Iowa Catholic Radio.
And we're back. You're listening to Faith on Trial on Iowa Catholic Radio. Gina, I thought we had two great guests today.
Very interesting stories. It was great to have Mike from First Liberty here, right, because he his addressing the Armed Services Committee in the U.S. Congress is a good thing. Mm-hmm. I wonder how many of our elected officials understand how much division is being created by the policies of this administration. Mm-hmm.
I think you're right, and I hope that they paid attention and they listened. It sounds like from the reports that I've seen from the meeting that they were. They apparently were asking some very good questions of him, and which means that they were listening.
Exactly.
At least the ones that were asking the questions were listening. Well, probably others that.
And based on the people they had before them at that meeting, including Southern Poverty Law Center, is very concerning to me. I think they think Catholics in general are hate mongers.
Yeah, and the Southern Poverty Law Center does not help any. Obviously, when they pull out the Ku Klux Klan and the neo-Nazis and they say these are hate groups, that's fine. Everybody kind of knows, you know.
Right.
And you don't have to eat the whole egg to know it's spoiled, right? You know right away. But when they start listing groups that oppose same-sex marriage and oppose abortion, and they lump those people in as hate groups because they don't agree with same-sex marriage, they don't believe in gender transitioning from one sex to another, then all of a sudden they're hate groups, and that doesn't make any sense either. They've gone over the.
It limits the public discourse. You know, we no longer can have conversations if we're labeled and canceled, for lack of a better word.
Yeah, you're
racist.
To be the popular. I'm not going to talk to you. You're racist.
Exactly. It ends the conversation, and you don't know where to go with that.
And Dr. Ann Hendershott talked about really some of the same things, only in a different context, about understanding what the hate really is and being able to define what it is, which obviously is not being done very well right now. According to her, when we deal with the Asian community and crimes against our Asian brothers and sisters.
Well, I thought it was interesting. My takeaway from our conversation with Dr. Ann Hendershott is that you watch the media and you wonder how much of it is propaganda. You know, every time a person of Asian descent is accosted, it's in the news. And so it was interesting to me to hear her say that she's analyzed the data, and there has been an increase. There really, really has. It's not in our imagination.
Right. Yeah. And that was interesting, her analysis. And her analysis is in Crisis Magazine. If you get Crisis Magazine, you can find it online.
Well, you can Google Dr. Ann Hendershott.
And you can read the whole thing. Yeah. Very great guest to have, too.
And I think I liked her being able to help us as Catholics understand envy, and also for us to understand that we may understand it, but people without a good catechesis may not understand this particular sin of envy.
Right.
And we've learned that we need to eliminate sin in our own homes in order to have it eliminated in the world. So we need to look within and take some personal responsibility and catch ourselves when we are experiencing envy.
And of course, the bad news in all of this is that Gallup has just reported that now under 50% of Americans are members of a church.
Oh, that's terrible.
Mm-hmm.
That's terrible. That's our job, right? We need to do a better job of evangelizing and helping people understand the truth, because I think the truth is lost in so much of our discourse.
Right. And unfortunately, the truth in terms of time catches up with us every now and then, and we've got to end things here. So let's finish with our prayer to St. Michael. St. Michael the Archangel, defend us in battle. Be our protection against the wickedness and snares of the devil. May God rebuke him, we humbly pray. And do thou, O Prince of the heavenly host, by the power of God, thrust into hell Satan and all the evil spirits who prowl about the world, seeking the ruin of souls. Amen. Well, that's it for this week. For Gina and myself, thank you for listening, and have a great Easter celebration this Sunday. And until next Thursday, have a blessed and peaceful week.
Our freedom of conscience and religion is being challenged by laws and regulations imposed by secular society. Faith on Trial, with Defender of the Faith, Deacon Mike Mano. Faith on Trial, Thursdays at 10 a.m. on Iowa Catholic Radio, iowacatholicradio.com, and the Iowa Catholic Radio app.
Support for Faith on Trial and Iowa Catholic Radio provided in part by Imogene Ingredients.